everyone, and welcome back to Piano Teaching Tips with Hannah. So today we're going to be talking about scales and 6 tips to help you teach scales to your students. Why are scales important? They are the musical building blocks, they are musical foundations. They help us with key signatures, they can help us put pieces into context, they can help us with improvisation. Now, I always teach pentascales first. Not to be confused with pentatonic scales, pentascales meaning 5. You'll notice lots of method books, they start with 5-note scales, but lots of them will start with the fingering in both hands, an octave apart, like this. So left hand going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right hand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I don't do that because I don't think it's helpful for when your student then learns a full scale, because you have to change the fingering. So they've already learnt something and then they have to learn it again differently. So I always teach the 5-note scale as you would a full scale. So in the right hand, that will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I don't know how well this comes out on the screen actually, but 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. But the left hand will still be going nice and easy, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the reason that's good is because it gets your student used to coordination between the hands, one hand doing something differently. And it's not too complicated because the left hand is the same thing, so they don't even have to concentrate on the left hand. They just look at the right hand because that's the only one that's changing. And you could teach lots of scales in this way, get them used to it, but I would probably stay away from teaching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless you have a very good reason to. Tip number 2, teach scales in groups. Now there's many different ways that you can do it, but do have a plan. And I promise you, this will save so much work as you can do it with all of your students. I tend to teach scales based on fingering patterns, so I group them that way. So I would teach A major with C major, but I wouldn't teach F major in there because F major, of course, in the right hand is different. So I don't group that one with the other 2. But there are many ways, different ways to teach scales. Some people teach them as they come up in pieces that the student is playing, and that's also a very good way. Lots of exam boards wherever you live in the world, ABRSM, Trinity, other boards, they have their own way of introducing scales with their relative minors. So whichever way you use, just make sure you stick with it, and that's something that will make your scale teaching a little bit more constant and easier. Tip number 3. Tell your students that they're all patterns. They're not hard. There are a lot of them, but they're not hard. Once you've worked out one and you know the pattern, you know the secret, then you can teach them all. So you don't have to teach all your scales in this way, but I would let your students know, so for example, if they're doing a major scale, that it will go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And get them to work out one more scale using that approach, just so they know how to do it. You don't, like I said, you don't have to teach them all in that way, but just so they have the tools, they're equipped with the tools to do it. Tip number 4, teaching minor scales. So I always teach the natural minor first, and we go from there. From the natural minor, you can talk about the harmonic minor being a raised 7th, and you get the student to work it out. And then you can do the same with the melodic minor. Now you've probably noticed in the last few that I've said, it's all to do with them working it out. You're not just dictating it to them, because, I mean, that's not the point of teaching. I mean, teaching is to get people to work it out themselves so they can go home and go, oh, I've got this, I've worked it out. I've got the tools to play any scale I want. Okay, so that's tip number 4. Tip number 5 would be to teach all the scales in a year. Now this could be one that you may not agree with, because you might want to do it, if you're doing exams, you might want to do it the way they're doing it, or you might have your own idea, 2 years, 3 years. But I think if you can teach all the scales in a year, Then students don't get bogged down by, this is a hard scale, miss, and this one's an easy scale. Let's go back to that easy scale we started with. So that way they just know that all scales, they're all just patterns at the end of the day, and you can play anyone within 1 year. And tip number 6, to make it fun. Scales don't have to be boring, they can be fun. You can do so many things with them. So you can incorporate dynamics, so you could get them to play it quietly to start with and crescendo on the way up, and then they can diminuendo on the way down, or vice versa. Or you can include articulation, different tempi markings, all sorts of things, to different rhythms even. You could have dotted rhythms. So just make it more exciting for them. There are no rules with scales, that's what's so beautiful. And that's it really. And I think the main things to take away from teaching scales is to make sure when you're teaching scales that the children or adults know why they're learning scales, the importance of scales. So there you go. Let me know in the comments below any tips that you found useful, or any other tips, because I am a teacher on a mission to find new and exciting ways to teach. So if you've got some ways, please let me know and I will add it to my studio. Thanks very much.